The sun was a harsh, burning ball above the red, rocky plains of the Deathworld. The wind swept across the jagged cliffs, carrying with it ash and the scent of scorched metal. A lone human figure moved quickly, her boots kicking up dust as she ran. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Every step she took was measured, careful, but she knew it was not enough. She had been sent on a reconnaissance mission, a simple task that she had done dozens of times before. But something was wrong. The air felt heavier, almost alive. The ground vibrated subtly under her feet. Then came the first sign of danger, a shrill alarm, sharp and sudden, echoing from the rocky walls around her. Before she could react, a group of alien guards appeared. Their bodies were unlike anything she had seen. Tall, armored in black metal, with elongated limbs and glowing red eyes, they moved faster than any human could. One of them raised a hand, and a glowing barrier shot out, cutting off her escape. Her pulse quickened. She tried to think, to find a plan, but her mind raced faster than her body. She knew running was useless. These aliens were trained hunters, and the Deathworld was their domain. Her boots slipped on the jagged rocks as she ducked behind a large boulder, hoping they hadn't seen her. But they had. One of the guards tilted its head, sensing movement. Its glowing eyes scanned the terrain, and it emitted a low, vibrating sound that reverberated through the air. More guards appeared, closing the circle around her. Her chest tightened with fear. She had no weapons, no backup. Only her instincts and speed could save her now. With a deep breath, she darted toward a narrow canyon. The guards followed, moving with uncanny precision. Every step she took, they anticipated. The canyon walls rose like giants on either side, their jagged surfaces glowing faintly in the heat of the sun. She could feel the air growing hotter, charged with some strange energy. Then, the unexpected happened. A rock beneath her feet shifted, and a hidden trapdoor swung open. She stumbled, barely keeping her balance, and fell through it. Darkness swallowed her. She landed hard on a cold, metallic floor. Pain shot through her leg, but she forced herself to stand. The room was small, enclosed by walls of shimmering metal. Strange symbols glowed faintly, pulsing rhythmically. She had no idea what this place was. The air smelled metallic and hot, like the inside of a furnace. The door above her slid shut with a hiss. She was trapped. A panic surged, but she forced herself to think. She had been trained for situations like this, to stay calm under pressure. Her eyes scanned the room, noting every detail. Strange devices lined the walls. Tubes filled with glowing liquid twisted and turned in impossible patterns. Panels of alien writing blinked with faint light. Then she noticed a timer. A small, holographic display floated in the air above her head. Numbers began to count down. 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Her stomach sank. She had exactly 1 hour. 1 hour before something happened. She didn't know what. The aliens had not told her. Perhaps they had no need. She could feel the tension in the room, the heat, the pulsing energy. Whatever was coming, it would be deadly. She moved carefully, examining the walls. One of the devices reacted to her touch, glowing brighter as her hand hovered near it. She jumped back. The device emitted a soft hum, almost like a whisper. Her mind raced. Could she use this to her advantage? Or was it another trap? A sudden vibration shook the floor. She stumbled but regained her balance. Through a small viewport, she could see movement above, the alien guards patrolling, their glowing eyes scanning every corner. She realized she was not alone. The entire prison seemed alive, aware of her presence. Time passed slowly. Minutes ticked by, each one heavier than the last. She tried to focus, to find patterns, to understand the strange devices around her. One panel blinked faster than the others. She reached out and pressed a symbol that looked like a circle within a triangle. Instantly, a small compartment opened, revealing a glowing sphere. Her curiosity overcame her fear. She grabbed it. The sphere pulsed warmly in her hand. Instinctively, she squeezed. A wave of energy coursed through her body, and she stumbled backward. Her vision blurred, but she could feel the room responding. The devices on the walls shifted, lights blinking faster. A faint sound reached her ears, a whisper, or maybe her imagination. "Move, survive," it said. She froze, unsure if it was real or a trick of the mind. Then she heard footsteps above. The aliens were coming closer. She had to act, and quickly. Using the sphere, she tested the devices. Each touch caused a reaction. A panel slid open, revealing vents, tunnels, or strange mechanisms. She realized the prison was not just a cage. It was a labyrinth of technology designed to test, trap, and perhaps even break her. Minutes turned into seconds. Sweat dripped from her forehead. The timer continued to count down. She felt a sudden surge of determination. She would not be a prisoner, not for an hour, not ever. She would survive. She discovered a small vent at the base of the wall. It was tight, but just big enough for her to crawl through. She hesitated, listening. The guard's footsteps echoed above. She took a deep breath, pressed the sphere to her chest for courage, and squeezed through the vent. The tunnel was dark and narrow, but she moved quickly, driven by adrenaline and fear. She could feel the heat rising, and the walls seemed to pulse with energy. Every twist and turn was a risk. She had no idea where it led, but staying in the main room was certain death. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber. It was dimly lit, but the air was cooler. Strange machinery lined the walls, and shadows danced across the floor. In the center of the room, a platform hovered, glowing faintly. She approached cautiously. The sphere in her hand began to vibrate, pulling her toward the platform. She stepped onto it, and instantly, the chamber responded. Panels slid open, revealing pathways, stairs, and hidden doors. She realized the prison was alive, reacting to her choices. Then, the sound came again, a low hum, growing louder. The walls vibrated. The heat intensified. She looked at the timer. 30 minutes remaining. Her mind raced. She had to escape, but the prison was more than just a building. It was a challenge, a test. Every decision she made could mean life or death. She could feel the weight of the hour pressing down on her. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the corner of the room. She froze. An alien figure, smaller than the guards outside, emerged. Its eyes glowed a soft blue, almost human in expression. It didn't attack, but it watched. She held her breath, unsure what to do. The alien tilted its head, then pointed toward a doorway. A silent, understanding passed between them. This was her chance. She had no weapons, no backup, but perhaps she had an ally, even in this alien prison. With cautious steps, she moved toward the doorway. The sphere pulsed warmly in her hand, guiding her. As she passed through, she glanced back. The chamber seemed to sigh, as if acknowledging her cleverness, her courage. The next room was larger, filled with more complex devices and strange energy fields. She knew the hour was ticking, and every second mattered. But for the first time, she felt a spark of hope. She was no longer just a prisoner. She was a player in a game she had only begun to understand. Her journey had started with fear and uncertainty. The unexpected turning point, the trapdoor, the sphere, the alien guide, had changed everything. She realized that survival on the Deathworld was not about brute force. It was about cleverness, observation, and courage. The timer continued to tick. 15 minutes left. She took a deep breath and prepared for what lay ahead. The prison still burned, the alarm still screamed, and the alien guard still hunted. But she had a plan, however fragile, and she was ready to fight with every ounce of strength in which she had. The hour had just begun, and the Deathworld had no idea what was about to face. The cold metal corridor stretched endlessly, lit by faint blue strips along the walls. The human girl moved cautiously, every step measured, her pulse echoing in her ears like a warning drum. The sphere pulsed gently in her hand, almost as if it was alive, guiding her forward. She had no weapons, no clear plan. Yet she felt the strange presence of the alien guide behind her, unseen but undoubtedly there. The timer in her mind ticked relentlessly. 1 hour. The prison had set this time as a limit, though she still didn't know exactly what would happen when it ran out. Heat and fear pressed down on her chest. She took a deep breath and forced herself to move. Every second mattered. She turned a sharp corner, and the hallway suddenly opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling stretched high, filled with twisting metal beams and hovering devices that hummed with energy. Strange floating platforms move in patterns that seem chaotic yet deliberate. It was a deadly dance. One misstep, and she could fall into a pit of glowing liquid or trigger some alien trap. Her instinct screamed at her to run, but she paused. This was no ordinary prison. It was designed to test her mind, her reflexes, her ability to survive. The sphere in her hand pulsed stronger, almost urging her to touch one of the platforms. Hesitation gripped her, but curiosity overpowered fear. She placed her foot carefully on the nearest floating platform. Immediately it reacted. The platform began to rise, carrying her slowly upward. She could feel a faint vibration through her boots. The walls around her shifted slightly, revealing new corridors and doors. The prison was alive, watching, learning from her actions. Suddenly, a loud alarm blared. A high-pitched, piercing sound that shook the very air. Panels on the walls lit up red. The sphere in her hand flared brightly, almost painfully so. She realized the alarm was not just a warning. It was a countdown to something worse. She glanced at the timer she had memorized. 45 minutes remaining. Her heart pounded. Every step she took from now on could trigger death or discovery. She had to move quickly, but carefully. As she advanced, a faint whisper echoed through the chamber. It wasn't from any device. It was human. She could recognize it instantly. Go fast, trust the sphere. Her lips parted in shock. Could the alien guide be speaking to her now? She shook her head, unsure if it was real or another trick of the prison. But the whisper repeated, soft yet urgent. She had no choice but to obey. The platform shifted suddenly, sending her forward at an unexpected speed. She stumbled, grabbed a handrail, and barely regained her balance. Far below, she glimpsed a floor filled with glowing pits, swirling with liquid that radiated heat and strange energy. One wrong step, and she would have been consumed instantly. A door appeared ahead, sliding open with a hiss. Beyond it lay a narrow tunnel, walls glowing faintly with strange alien writing. The sphere pulsed faster as she approached. It seemed to recognize this path as correct. She stepped inside, moving as quietly as she could, aware that the aliens above were patrolling. Time stretched like a living thing. Every sound, the hum of machines, her breathing, even the pulse of the sphere, felt amplified. Then, from the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. She froze, heart hammering. Two smaller aliens emerged, moving silently. Unlike the tall guards outside, these were agile, almost cat-like, their limbs long and flexible. The girl held her breath. Any sudden movement could trigger an attack. The aliens circled her, their glowing eyes scanning every inch of her. She remembered the whisper, trust the sphere. She pressed it lightly, and a faint shield of energy expanded around her body, invisible to the aliens but detectable in the subtle waves of air around them. The aliens hissed, confused. They backed away, seemingly disoriented. Her pulse slowed slightly. She realized the sphere wasn't just a guide. It was a weapon, a protector, a key to understanding the prison. She had to learn its limits. Fast, the tunnel opened into a large observation chamber. Transparent walls revealed another part of the prison, a massive central hub with glowing machinery, energy conduits stretching in all directions, and platforms moving like gears in a giant clock. Alien guards moved along the pathways, unaware of her presence in this hidden chamber. Her mind raced. She had to find a way to use this hub to her advantage. The sphere pulsed strongly as she walked closer. A control panel, covered in alien symbols, floated in the center. Tentatively, she touched it. The holographic interface sprang to life, reacting to her presence. She pressed symbols at random, hoping to learn their purpose. Suddenly, the entire chamber responded. Platforms shifted, pathways changed direction, and the aliens outside began to react, rushing toward exits that now moved farther away. She realized the prison could be manipulated, but she had to think quickly. The hour was still counting down. Her thoughts were interrupted by a low rumble. The floor shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Something massive was awakening somewhere deep in the prison. The sphere vibrated violently, almost as if warning her. Then she saw it, a shadow moving in the distance. Something larger than any guard, massive and dark, with glowing eyes and limbs that could crush steel. The Deathworld prison was not just a test. It was a battlefield, and she had just become the primary target. Fear surged through her, but it was tempered by determination. She could not let this creature catch her. She needed a plan. The hub offered control over the platforms, the pathways, perhaps even the energy fields. She moved quickly, pressing symbols, manipulating the prison itself. The platform shifted just in time, creating a path away from the shadow. She ran, her movements precise, guided by the sphere. Behind her, the shadow roared, a sound that shook the walls and made the air shimmer with heat. The aliens outside were faltering, confused by the changes she had triggered. She reached another corridor, this one narrower, with walls covered in glowing, liquid-filled tubes. The sphere pulsed urgently. She realized she could use the tubes. Carefully, she pressed one, and a burst of energy shot out, creating a barrier between her and the shadow. Sparks flew, the air hissed, and the floor shook violently. Minutes felt like hours. The timer ticked down. 30 minutes remaining. Sweat ran down her face. She had survived the first challenges, but the hardest part was yet to come. Every step now required precision, courage, and trust in the alien sphere. As she advanced, the whisper returned. Half past survive. She nodded, unsure if it was real or a trick, but the guidance was invaluable. She could feel the prison reacting to her, aware of her choices. The sphere pulsed stronger, almost alive, guiding her hand and foot to the safest spots. Another shadow loomed ahead, smaller guards, agile and deadly, blocking her path. She pressed the sphere to the ground. A wave of energy erupted, knocking the guards off balance. She ran past them, heart racing, lungs burning. Each step brought her closer to survival. Each mistake could mean death. Then a door appeared. It opened slowly, revealing a chamber unlike any she had seen before. It was circular, with a single platform in the center. Energy arcs jumped from wall to wall, pulsing with deadly force. The sphere pulled her forward, almost insisting she step onto the platform. Her hand trembled as she touched it. Immediately, the platform lifted and the chamber responded. Pathways rotated, barriers shifted, and she realized she had found a control point. The prison was no longer just a threat. It was a tool. If she learned quickly, she could turn the prison itself against the pursuers. A sudden vibration shook the chamber. The massive shadow she had seen earlier was closer than ever. Flames erupted in corridors behind her. The aliens were converging, drawn by her movements. She clenched the sphere tightly, feeling its warmth and energy course through her. Time is running out, the whisper warned. She didn't need to hear it to know. She could feel the weight of the hour pressing down on her. Survival required speed, courage, and cunning. Every choice now was life or death. With a deep breath, she leaped from the platform, landing on a shifting corridor just as the energy arcs above crackled dangerously. The prison trembled, but she was moving faster than ever. Guided by instinct, the sphere, and a spark of hope, the hour had begun in full force. The Deathworld prison was alive, dangerous, and unpredictable, but for the first time, she felt she could fight it. She was no longer just a prisoner. She was a player in a deadly game, and the next 30 minutes would test her like never before. The metallic corridors stretched endlessly, but the girl was no longer the same human who had fallen to the trapdoor hours ago. Her breathing was steady, her mind sharp, her eyes scanning every detail. The sphere pulsed gently in her hand, its warmth a constant reassurance. She had survived the first challenges, avoided death traps, and even manipulated the prison's pathways. Yet she knew the hour was far from over. Ahead, the corridor split into multiple paths. Each doorway pulsed faintly, as though the prison was testing her again. The whispers returned, soft and urgent. Choose carefully, trust. She didn't fully understand who or what was speaking, but instinct told her to obey. She chose the middle path, where faint light spilled from cracks in the walls. The path opened into a circular chamber, larger than any she had seen. The walls were covered in alien symbols, moving constantly, like living scripts. She realized that the symbols were not mere decoration. They were alive, reacting to her presence, recording her every movement. She stepped closer, fascinated despite the danger. The sphere pulsed strongly, almost vibrating in her hand, as if it wanted her to touch the symbols. Hesitant, she reached out. The symbols glowed brighter at her touch, revealing a holographic map of the prison. Platforms, corridors, vents, and traps flickered into view. She gasped. This was more than a prison. It was a living labyrinth, constantly changing, always aware of its captives. The map highlighted her current location with a bright pulse, and a faint path appeared, leading deeper into the heart of the structure. Suddenly, the chamber shuddered violently. The symbols flickered and the map distorted. From the shadows, the small alien guides appeared again. Unlike the larger guards, these beings move with precision and intelligence, observing rather than attacking. One of them stepped forward, extending a hand toward her. Her instinct screamed to flee, but she remembered to whisper, "Ally, watch, learn." She nodded cautiously. The alien's hand touched the sphere, and a surge of understanding passed through her. She could sense the prison's energy, its traps, and even hidden pathways. It was as if the sphere was teaching her the secrets of the prison. A sudden roar echoed from the corridors outside. The massive shadow, the one she had glimpsed earlier, was approaching. Heat radiated through the walls, and the air grew thick. The sphere vibrated violently. She knew that the next few minutes would determine her survival. Using the holographic map, she identified a hidden vent leading to another chamber. It was narrow, almost invisible, but it bypassed the main pathways where the guards would hunt her. She crawled through it carefully, the sphere pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Every movement had to be precise. Even the slightest noise could alert the aliens. The vent opened into a large room filled with alien machinery. Strange tubes filled with glowing liquid twisted across the floor and ceiling. Panels of energy floated mid-air, pulsing with light and heat. The girl realized that this room was more than a prison. It was a laboratory or perhaps a power hub. The sphere in her hand pulsed brightly, as if urging her to interact with the devices. She approached the floating panel and pressed a symbol that resembled interlocking triangles. Immediately, the machinery reacted. Energy arcs leaped across the room, illuminating hidden platforms and pathways. She could see a pattern forming, a path that could lead her deeper into the prison's core. But with every step she took, the room shifted, adapting to her movements. From the shadows, the smaller alien guides observed her, occasionally nudging panels or opening new paths. She realized that the prison was not just a trap. It was a complex test. Her intelligence, instincts, and courage were being measured. Every clever decision she made unlocked new opportunities, while mistakes would trigger deadly consequences. Suddenly, the floor beneath her shook violently. A section of the room collapsed, revealing a pit filled with glowing, boiling liquid. The massive shadow's roar echoed closer. She jumped back, gripping the sphere tightly. The small aliens hissed, circling her, but did not attack. Instead, they seemed to be directing her attention, guiding her through the most dangerous spots. The sphere pulsed faster, and a faint energy trail appeared on the floor. It led toward a small platform suspended above the pit. With a deep breath, she leaped. Sparks flew as her boots landed, the platform swaying dangerously. She pressed a panel at the center, and another path revealed itself. A narrow walkway lined with energy shields. She moved forward carefully, each step calculated. The massive shadow's roar grew louder, shaking the walls. Flames erupted in distant corridors. The aliens outside were converging, their glowing eyes scanning every possible escape. But she had the sphere, the alien guides, and her growing understanding of the prison's secrets. She was no longer merely reacting. She was controlling, manipulating, surviving. A sudden flash of light revealed another hidden pathway, leading to a chamber that pulsed with strange energy. She approached cautiously. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting. Strange. Symbols floated in midair, forming a complex pattern. She realized that the sphere could interact with these symbols, unlocking hidden mechanisms. Her fingers pressed the glowing symbols, and the chamber responded. Platforms shifted, energy fields stabilized, and a hidden doorway opened. She stepped through, entering a long, narrow corridor filled with faint mist. The sphere pulsed in a steady rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. She felt a strange connection to it, as if it was now part of her senses, guiding her through the prison's secrets. Suddenly, she heard movement ahead, larger than the small guides, faster than any human could react. The massive shadow had found her path. Her heart pounded. She pressed the sphere to the ground, and a surge of energy erupted, creating a temporary barrier that pushed the shadow back. Sparks flew, the air hissed, and the floor trembled. The girl ran, following the sphere's guidance. The corridor twisted and turned, leading her to a chamber filled with floating platforms and energy conduits. She realized that this was a prison's core, its heart of power and control. If she could master this chamber, she could manipulate the entire structure. The alien guides appeared again, watching silently. She approached the central platform, placing the sphere on it. Instantly, the chamber responded. Energy arcs formed pathways. Platforms rotated, and the prison's hidden mechanisms revealed themselves. She could see every corridor, trap, and guard location. For the first time, she had a true advantage, but the massive shadow was close. Its roar shook the chamber, flames flickering in distant halls. The timer in her mind ticked relentlessly. 30 minutes remaining. She had to act fast. Using the sphere, she manipulated the platforms to create barriers, traps, and escape routes. The prison became her weapon, her shield, her ally. As she worked, she realized something extraordinary. The prison was learning from her, adapting to her strategies. Each clever move unlocked more secrets, more power. She could feel the pulse of the structure, the energy flowing to the walls and floors, responding to her intelligence and courage. The small alien guides observed quietly, their glowing eyes following every action. She understood now. They were not enemies. They were part of the prison's design, observers, testers, guiding her toward mastery. A sudden rumble shook the chamber. The massive shadow appeared at the entrance, larger and more terrifying than before. But this time, she was ready. The platform shifted beneath her. Energy barriers rose, and the shadow's path was blocked. Sparks flew, flames hissed, and the massive creature roared in frustration. The girl's heart raced, but determination burned brighter. She had discovered the prison's secrets, learned to manipulate its mechanisms, and gained allies in the form of the small guides and mysterious sphere. She was no longer a prisoner. She was a strategist, a survivor, a force the Deathworld had not anticipated. The hour was still ticking. 15 minutes remained. She knew the final challenges would test her more than anything before, but for the first time, she felt a surge of confidence. The prison was dangerous, alive, and unpredictable, but she had learned its language, understood its rhythms, and was ready to turn its power to her advantage. The massive shadow recoiled, and the small alien guides retreated, observing her mastery with silent approval. The sphere pulsed warmly in her hand, almost like a heartbeat in sync with her own. She took a deep breath and prepared for the next stage. The hour was far from over, and the Deathworld still had many secrets to reveal. She was ready. The air was thick with smoke and heat, choking the girl as she sprinted through the shifting corridors of the Deathworld prison. Sparks flew from the walls, and distant explosions rattled the floors beneath her boots. The massive shadow she had glimpsed before was close, its glowing eyes piercing the smoke, its steps shaking the metal corridors. The sphere pulsed violently in her hand, guiding her every movement, warning her of danger before she could even see it. The chamber behind her had erupted into flames, corridors collapsing, metal twisting under the sudden heat. The prison was alive, and it was angry. The massive shadow roared, a sound that echoed like 1,000 drums, shaking the walls and making her heart race. Every second mattered. Every wrong move would be her last. She skidded around a corner, narrowly avoiding a falling beam. Sparks from the metal scorched her boots, and she pressed the sphere tightly to her chest, feeling its warmth and power surge through her. It pulsed faster now, almost screaming in warning. The flames behind her were spreading and smoke thickened, curling like serpents through the corridors. Ahead, she spotted a pathway that had not existed before. The sphere's light pulsed in rhythm, guiding her. She didn't hesitate. She ran, her mind focusing entirely on survival, her body moving instinctively. The floor beneath her vibrated. The prison seemed to sense her determination, reacting violently to her defiance. Panels shifted, corridors rotated, and energy fields leaped into the air, creating both barriers and bridges. The The massive shadow appeared at the end of the corridor, blocking her path. Its eyes glowed brighter, and it moved faster than she thought possible. She pressed the sphere to the floor. Instantly, a wave of energy erupted, forming a temporary barrier between her and the creature. Sparks danced around her, and the heat intensified. She could feel the prison itself lending her support, the sphere acting as a conductor of the building's energy. Breathing hard, she leaped onto a floating platform that the sphere had activated. The platform lifted her into the air, hovering just above the flames below. She realized the prison had not just trapped her, it had created a battlefield, testing her speed, intelligence, and courage all at once. As the platform moved forward, she noticed more hazards appearing. Floating energy blades, sudden bursts of fire, and alien mechanisms that snapped shut like jaws. She ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding each threat. The sphere pulsed continuously, almost like it was urging her to anticipate the dangers before they appeared. She glanced at the timer she had memorized. 10 minutes remaining. Her stomach tightened. She had survived traps, discovered the prison secrets, and even manipulated its pathways. But the final moments would be the deadliest. Suddenly, a panel in the ceiling burst open, releasing a torrent of molten metal that flowed across the corridor. She jumped, landing on a narrow ledge that protruded from the wall. Sparks flew around her, and the heat singed her hair. The massive shadow followed, its enormous limbs smashing the floors, sending waves of fire in every direction. The sphere pulsed in her hand, and a faint energy trail appeared along the ledge. She ran, following it carefully. Each step required balance, precision, and courage. The ledge twisted suddenly, almost vertical, and she had to grab the edge to avoid falling into the molten flow below. Her heart pounded, and sweat dripped from her brow. Then came the first of the smaller alien guides. They appeared from the shadows, moving quickly to block some flames. She realized they were helping, guiding her through the deadliest parts of the prison. One of them nudged a lever on the wall, causing a platform to rise from the fire below. She jumped onto it, rolling to regain her balance. The massive shadow roared in frustration. Flames erupted even higher, smoke thickening to the point where she could barely see. Yet the sphere pulsed brighter, illuminating the safest path. She realized that this was not just survival, it was a test of wit, agility, and courage. The prison was alive, and it was teaching her how to master it. A sudden explosion from behind sent debris flying. She ducked instinctively, feeling the heat scorch her skin. The sphere pulsed urgently, directing her toward corridors she had not noticed before. She ran, the walls twisting as if the building itself were moving to protect her. The flames were relentless, but the sphere acted as both guide and shield. The massive shadow appeared again, this time blocking the exit. Its roar was deafening, shaking the chamber walls. The girl pressed the sphere to the floor once more. Energy surged upward, creating a temporary barrier of light. Sparks flew, and the shadow recoiled, momentarily stunned. She sprinted past, following the energy trail into a large chamber filled with alien machinery. The room was vast, filled with glowing tubes, floating panels, and energy conduits. In the center floated a circular platform pulsing with light. She realized this was the prison's core chamber, the heart of its power. The sphere pulsed violently, almost guiding her directly onto the platform. As she stepped onto it, the chamber responded. Energy arcs shifted, pathways reconfigured, and barriers rose to block the massive shadow. Sparks danced around her, and the temperature dropped slightly as the platform lifted her above the flames. She realized that, for the first time, she had control. The prison itself could now work with her, not just against her. But the massive shadow was not defeated. It roared again, flames shooting toward the platform. She pressed the sphere to the control panel floating above. Energy surged, creating a series of moving platforms and barriers between her and the creature. The massive shadow roared in frustration, unable to reach her. Her mind raced. She had only a few minutes remaining before the hour ended. The sphere pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat, guiding her toward the next section. She realized that the prison had not just tested her endurance. It had tested her ability to understand, manipulate, and master its mechanisms under extreme stress. The flames surged again, corridors collapsing. Sparks and molten metal rained down around her. The massive shadow smashed through walls, but the platform shifted just in time, carrying her above the destruction. She could feel her body trembling, but determination burned brighter than fear. Another small alien guide appeared, nudging a lever that opened a hidden corridor. She ran, following the glowing energy trail provided by the sphere. The massive shadow roared in fury, but could not follow. She realized she was close to escaping the prison's most dangerous sections. Finally, she reached a narrow corridor leading to a hidden exit. Flames licked the walls behind her, smoke choking the air. The massive shadow paused at the threshold, unable to pursue further. She sprinted, ignoring the heat and pain, guided by the sphere and her instincts. As she emerged into a small chamber beyond, the timer in her mind ticked down. 2 minutes remaining. She pressed the sphere to the platform beneath her, creating a surge of energy that lifted her above a collapsing corridor. Sparks and molten metal flew around, but she landed safely on the next platform. Her heart pounded. Sweat dripped from her face. Flames roared behind her, but she had survived the worst. The sphere pulsed gently now, almost as if congratulating her. She realized she had learned the prison's language, mastered its deadly challenges, and survived the burning threat that had seemed impossible just minutes ago. The massive shadow roared one final time before retreating into the depths of the prison. The small alien guides disappeared, their glowing eyes watching silently from the shadows. The chamber was still dangerous, the air thick with smoke, but she had proven herself. She was no longer a mere prisoner. She was a survivor, a strategist, and a master of the Deathworld prison secrets. With one last surge of energy from the sphere, she prepared for the final stage. The hour was nearly over, but the prison still had more challenges to reveal. Flames still burned, corridors shifted, and dangers lurked around every corner. But she was ready. She took a deep breath, gripping the sphere tightly. Her mind was sharp, her body primed, and her determination unshakable. The burning threat had tested her courage, agility, and intelligence, but she had survived. The final moments of the hour would determine her ultimate fate, and she was prepared to face whatever came next. The Deathworld prison had been relentless, alive, and dangerous, but she was no longer afraid. She had turned its flames and shadows into a proving ground, mastering the very challenges that had been designed to destroy her. The hour was almost over and the prison still burned, but she was ready for whatever came next. The air was thick with smoke, sparks, and the acrid scent of molten metal as the girl stepped onto the central platform of the Deathworld prison. She could feel the sphere pulsing in her hand, warmer than ever, almost alive, an extension of her own senses. The massive shadow had retreated temporarily, but she knew it was still hunting, waiting for any slip. Every instinct screamed that the final moments of the hour would decide everything. She glanced at the timer she had memorized. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. The prison had tested her courage, intelligence, and reflexes, but the hardest challenge was still ahead: escape. She had learned to manipulate the prison's pathways, control its energy barriers, and even predict the movements of the alien guards. But leaving alive was an entirely different challenge. Platforms shifted beneath her feet. Sparks flew from walls as energy conduits flared unpredictably. The sphere pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat, guiding her toward the exit. She realized the prison was offering her a path, a final opportunity. But one wrong step, and she would be consumed by fire, crushed by collapsing metal, or caught by the massive shadow. Ahead, she saw a narrow corridor leading to a small hatch. It appeared fragile, almost like it had been designed to collapse under the weight of the unworthy. The sphere pulsed stronger, signaling it was a correct path. Her pulse quickened as she sprinted toward it, dodging floating energy blades and molten metal bursts. The massive shadow reappeared suddenly, bursting through a collapsing wall with a roar that shook the corridor. Sparks and fire shot into the air, scorching the walls. She pressed the sphere to the floor, generating a pulse of energy that created a temporary shield around her. The shadow slammed into it, recoiling with a screech. She seized the opportunity, leaping forward into the narrow corridor. The walls of the corridor shifted, constricting and expanding unpredictably. Energy spikes emerged from the floor. She jumped over them, rolling under bars of searing heat. Sweat stung her eyes and her lungs burned from smoke, but she forced herself to focus. The sphere pulsed constantly, warning her of every trap before she could see it. Suddenly, the path split into 3 tunnels, each glowing with a different color of light: red, blue, and green. The sphere pulsed strongly toward the blue tunnel. Without hesitation, she ran toward it. The massive shadow paused, scanning the corridors, unsure which path she had taken. Sparks flew as energy fields in the red and green tunnels activated, cutting off pursuit. She entered the blue tunnel, narrow and twisting, almost pitch black. She could hear the roar of the massive shadow echoing from the other tunnels. Her boots skidded over the metal floor, but the sphere's light pulsed brightly, guiding her steps. Every twist, every turn was a race against death. The tunnel opened into a large chamber filled with floating platforms above a pit of glowing liquid. Energy arcs crisscrossed the room, creating dangerous patterns she had to navigate. The sphere pulsed urgently. She realized she could manipulate the platforms to create a safe path. She touched the sphere to a nearby control panel. Sparks flew as the platform shifted into position. She ran, leaping from one to another, timing her jumps perfectly. The energy arcs flared dangerously close, but she moved with precision, guided by the sphere's pulse. Halfway across, a sudden explosion shook the chamber. The platform beneath her tilted violently. She grabbed a metal beam and swung herself onto another platform, just as the first collapsed into the glowing pit. The massive shadows roar echo below, unable to reach her. She ran, heart hammering, across the final platforms. The exit hatch was in sight. It glowed faintly, almost welcoming her. She sprinted toward it, but the massive shadow recovered and leaped after her, its enormous limbs crashing onto platforms. Sparks flew, and the platform swayed dangerously. She pressed the sphere to the floor, generating a pulse that sent the shadow reeling backward. She reached the hatch and slammed it open. A blast of cooler air greeted her. She climbed through quickly, pulling herself into a narrow shaft leading to the surface. The sphere pulsed one last time before dimming slightly, almost exhausted from the energy it had poured into protecting her. The shaft opened onto the jagged plains of the Deathworld. Flames and smoke rose behind her. The prison was collapsing, alive with energy it could no longer contain. The massive shadow roared one final time before retreating into the burning structure. She didn't look back. Every step she took led her farther from death, farther from the prison that had tested her in every imaginable way. She ran across the scorched plains, her boots kicking up ash. The wind whipped against her face, carrying the scent of fire and molten metal. Her body ached, lungs burned, and her hands were blistered, but adrenaline carried her forward. She could hear the distant sound of the collapsing prison, the final screams of machinery, the roar of the massive shadow, and the hissing of flames devouring the corridors. The sun was setting, casting a red glow over the jagged rocks. She paused for a moment, catching her breath. The sphere lay in her hand, dim now, but still warm. She realized that it had been more than a guide. It had been a companion, a protector, and perhaps even a teacher. Without it, she would not have survived the burning threat, the traps, or the massive shadow. Her mind raced. She had escaped, but at what cost? The Deathworld prison had tested her courage, intelligence, and survival instincts to the absolute limit. It had pushed her to the edge of death, forced her to outsmart impossible challenges, and face a creature that seemed unstoppable. Yet she had survived, stronger and smarter than before. As darkness fell, she noticed movement in the distance. Smaller alien figures emerged from the shadows, watching her silently. Their glowing eyes followed her every step. She realized the Deathworld was not done with her. The prison may have been defeated, but the inhabitants of this world were still aware of her presence. She gripped the sphere tightly and moved cautiously across the plains. The wind carried faint whispers, almost like voices, warning her, guiding her, or perhaps tempting her to return. She ignored them, focusing on the path ahead. Survival required not only strength, but also vigilance. The Deathworld would not forget her defiance. Suddenly, the ground beneath her trembled. A smaller shadow moved across the plains, fast and silent. She recognized a pattern of movement. It was one of the prison's guardians, scouting, testing. Her pulse quickened. She had escaped the prison, but the world itself was still a threat. She sprinted toward a ridge, using the rocks as cover. Sparks of energy flared from distant machines and the ruins of the prison. Smoke and fire painted the horizon red. She could hear the faint echoes of the collapsing building, the screams of machines, and the roar of alien creatures. Every sound reminded her that escape was only temporary. Survival would require constant vigilance. Her body screamed in pain, but determination burned brighter than fatigue. She had conquered the Deathworld prison, survived impossible traps, and evaded the massive shadow. Yet the experience had changed her mind sharper, instincts faster, and courage stronger. She knew that the Deathworld would test her again, but she was ready. As she reached the top of the ridge, she paused. The sphere pulsed gently in her hand, almost as if reassuring her that the immediate danger had passed. The prison burned behind her, collapsing into molten destruction. Flames reached high into the sky, illuminating the jagged rocks and casting long shadows. She looked back once more. The Deathworld prison was gone, destroyed, yet still alive in memory. The massive shadow had retreated, but its threat lingered. She clenched the sphere tightly, feeling the warmth, the energy, the pulse that had guided her through every danger. She turned away from her ruins and began walking across the plains, her figure silhouetted against the burning horizon. Each step was a victory, a proof of survival, and a reminder that courage, intelligence, and determination could overcome even the deadliest of challenges. The Deathworld was harsh, merciless, and alive, but she had survived. She had turned the prison's tests into a proving ground, mastered its secrets, and walked away from flames that could have consumed her. The hour was over, but the consequences of her survival were just beginning. The Deathworld had seen her strength, her cunning, and her resilience. It would remember, and somewhere in the shadows of the burning plains, the massive shadow watched, waiting for the next challenge. For now, though, she was free. The sphere pulsed one final time, warm and steady, as if acknowledging her triumph. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool wind of the open plains against her face. Her body ached, her mind raced, but she smiled faintly. Survival was never easy, but it was worth every moment. The Deathworld may have been merciless, but she had proved herself. And the story of her escape, the story of a human defying impossible odds, would live on,